Hello everyone and welcome back to my show, The Interview. I'm your host, Susan Lee McDonald. Hallyu, otherwise known as the Korean wave, is starting to sweep the entire globe. People are so fascinated by the Korean culture, Korean dramas, and Korean K-pop that really stands above a lot of the rest. Because K-pop has become so popular, there are many people from around the world who are trying to scour new talent here in Korea. And none other than an amazing producer named Gordon Williams is here in Korea to see if there is a new international star here in Korea to discover. He has discovered the likes of Alicia Keys, Lauryn Hill, and so many other incredible people, and has worked with some of the best in the industry, also known as Quincy Jones #2. Let's get to meet Gordon Williams. Gordon Williams, also known as Commissioner Gordon, has produced the albums of many top singers in America and worked with countless world-renowned musicians. He began his career in music as a DJ before signing on to Columbia and Sony, where he produced the soundtracks of the blockbuster movie Men in Black. He gained huge success at a young age with the album The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, which he worked on as a recording engineer, winning the Grammy Awards for the Best R&B Album and Album of the Year in 1998. Stay tuned to find out more about Commissioner Gordon's life story, career in the music industry, and experience in Korea. Hey Gordon, thank you so much for being on The Interview. I'm so excited to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I know that the music industry knows you, back and forth, and a lot of the artists that you've worked with have become the world top stars. Would you mind telling us a little bit about what you've done and what you do currently?
Oh, sure. Sure, Susan. Professionally, I'm known as Commissioner Gordon. I'm an engineer and producer. I started as a DJ. Ricka, back when it was still Ricka, in the Bronx. And from DJing, went into remixing. From remixing, went into engineering, really, and mixing records. Now, not DJ mixing, but actually mixing in recording studios and producing. And some of the artists that you might know of, Lauryn Hill, Will Smith, Alicia Keys, Amy Winehouse, and the Marley family, Stephen Marley in particular, but I've worked with Damien as well.
You know, I'm such a huge fan of Lauryn Hill. And
Me too.
She's just got the most beautiful, incredible voice. And I think really from a young age, she just had incredible talent, yes?
Yeah, Lauryn is a very special person. Lauryn is someone that, I always tell people she's an old soul. Lauryn has the ability to draw you in. I mean, even in the recording studio, and she's a great interpreter of song. So, and I think she's always had that. I think she's always had that, which is what captivates people about her. And she can rap. So, you don't really find, it's very rare to find a person that was as proficient rapping as they were singing. So she was like the total package.
And she's so beautiful to boot.
Just
so gorgeous.
Yeah, she has it all.
Yeah. When you were working with Lauryn for her first album, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, were there any special things that happened during the recording sessions that are kind of noteworthy?
Yeah, I mean, so many special things, I mean, she was having children at the same time, so she had her first child, Zion, and that was really special to see, even with the song that she wrote about him, to see the song happen, Zion actually happen, and grow up right in front of us, because he was in the studio a lot when we were recording, recording the album. Just very significant. I have one. I'll give you, for you, Susan, I'll give you one of these. This happened one time. This actually wasn't while we were making the album. This happened during the tour, which was the first tour this tour started right as the album was done. And we were in Denver, and after the show, because I also mixed the shows live as well, so I was there again first to get there because you got to set up and the last to leave. And we had a huge production. I mean, there was 19 people on stage.
Wow.
The crew was about 75 people, and I was pretty much in charge of dealing with sound and production and setup and all that stuff. So it would be, you know, after the show was over, it could be a good hour that I would still be in the venue after everyone was gone. So I was by the soundboard, the place had cleared out, and this little girl, well, I say a little girl, but she was about 16, maybe 16, 17, came up to me and asked me, you know, was Lauryn still there? And I said, well, no, I don't think so. I think she's probably gone. I said, what can I do for you? And then she opens up, she has a poster rolled up, and she opens up the poster, and on the poster is a picture of a baby, and it says, thank you, Lauryn, and, you know, some words about, you know, that basically this was like Lauryn's godchild. So she begins to tell me the story that she got pregnant, you know, in a situation that wasn't really a great situation, a young girl, and got into it, but and was afraid to speak to her mother about it and was going to have an abortion. And the song Zion actually, you know, listening to the song, it made her feel like, okay, she needs to talk to her mom about it and see, you know, is this the right thing? And her mother actually, you know, spoke to her, and then she decided to keep the baby, and she was really, really happy. And she was showing me the picture to give, the poster to give to Lauryn to say, hey, you know, if it wasn't for her and this song, that this child wouldn't have been here. So that was really, I mean, it was a beautiful little
So
baby
deep.
too. Yeah, it was really deep, yeah.
You've named some really incredible artists, and I think among them you've also worked with Diana Ross, Beyonce, Jay-Z. Can I ask you what it was like to work with Beyonce and how that happened?
Beyonce actually worked with her when she was just starting. I worked with her when, at the time that I met Beyonce, I was at Sony Music, working at Columbia Records. I was a staff producer and A&R there, and Beyonce was part of the group Destiny's Child. And they were doing a Christmas record, and I got called in to work with the group. It was, amongst other groups, it was a compilation record, so it featured, actually it had Alicia Keys on it. It was her first signing there as well. So
Really?
so Alicia probably was about maybe 16 at the time, and Beyonce was probably like close to that age, somewhere around there, because they were all really young. You know, what really struck me about her is how professional she was already at such a young age, and how she was able to pull everyone together. I mean, they only did a part in the record, but it was clear that that girl was a star.
Wow. When you were working with Alicia Keys, you said that one of the first times you worked with her was with Beyonce and Destiny's Child for the Christmas album. But when you first started working with her on her album, tell us about how you were linked up with Alicia at that time.
Same as with Beyonce, I was at Sony, and Alicia's first deal, she was signed to Columbia Records, and I was an A&R person there, A&R and a staff producer, and she was working on her record, and we ended up going in, her and a boyfriend at the time, who was her producer. Well, they kind of produced together, you know, the three of us went in the studio and we worked, and the first record that I did with her on her own was on the Men in Black soundtrack, which a lot of people don't know. She has an actual song on the Men in Black soundtrack.
That's so cool. That's one of my favorite movies too, and it's one of the movies that I actually bought a soundtrack for because I almost never seem to buy soundtracks.
Yeah, most people don't.
What do you think it was about that soundtrack in particular that just really got people's attention?
That song, you know, the movie was really strong, and Will was such a, you know, such a character, and then he's a pretty good rapper. You know, a lot of times people forget that he was doing that first, you know, before the television. So he was able to, I think, really put together a song that embodied the movie, but also worked as a commercial song. I think that's the difference, that it could play on the radio, but also play in a movie, play in, you know, background in the store. You know, it was just a really catchy song.
So Gordon, this is your first visit to Korea, and I'm curious what your experience has been like during your first visit.
Very eye-opening. Yeah, you know, prior to this trip, I was in China, so I spent a week in China and now a week here. So both the contrasts and the similarities, you know, were great. The people were great. The hospitality and the way that I was embraced, you know, it was just a wonderful experience. Korea, in particular, as far as, you know, the recording industry and the the level of artistry that's here, you know, is very impressive. You know, it's very impressive, very developed. You know, a lot of great artists, a lot of great songs. Even though you don't, you know, for me, not understanding the language, but I'm learning. I'm working on my Korean right now.
Yay!
Yeah. So and my Chinese. You can feel the music. You know, you can feel the music and you can feel the songs. And I've met some, you know, super talented people. You know, I've heard some really strong rappers. I heard some great singers. I heard some great producers. So I would just say I just want to give the whole country a hug.
And they're going to hug you right back. Because it's not typical for a lot of really super accomplished producers and people from the scene in the States to come to Korea. But recently, as you probably know, Quincy Jones came here, and he was someone that you worked with a long time ago, yes?
Yeah, Quincy was probably, I would have to say, my first real music mentor. You know, we didn't spend a lot of time in the studio. We spent more time talking than anything else. But he's such, you know, he's the master. You know, he's such a master that one conversation you could learn so much. You could change your life in one conversation. You know, because the breadth and the width of experiences that he's had. So
he came to Korea basically looking for undiscovered talent or a potential international star.
Yes.
And I'm curious, is that something that you're interested in too?
Yeah, I mean, I could understand knowing him. See, he's the Godfather. I could understand just being here in this short time. I could understand why he's here doing that because it's so much talent here. It's an unbelievable hub of energy. You know, that's what I feel when I'm around, you know, the studios and just energy. So, yeah, I would always, you know, have an eye. You know, you can't help but do that, you know, from doing it for so long. But really, since it was my first trip, I just really wanted to just meet people and you know, good. I can't say that, you know, we're going to, again, take anybody to the promised land, but I do feel like there's a lot of opportunity for collaboration, and I'm definitely very interested in that.
What do you think are some strategies for up-and-coming artists to kind of be better than the rest, be better than the competition?
Be an individual. You know, be an individual. One thing I do see here is that there's a lot of, you know, similarities between, you know, the bands and the singers and the rappers, you know, probably because it's a phase of that happening, because that happened in hip hop as well. But if you look at the ones that are the biggest, the artists that were the biggest, the biggest artists always set trends. And setting a trend is a lonely road. It's not an easy place to go, because you're gonna step out at a time and you're going to find yourself by yourself. But it's in that being alone that is where you have to find your security. If you can do that and you can stand on that, then eventually what happens is people look at you. They say, oh, wait a minute, what's up with that person? As opposed to if you're the one that's like the other one, then okay, you might get in, but will you last? You know, will you be special? Will you have anything really to offer? You know, if you haven't cried, what can you tell somebody about? If you haven't suffered, how can you speak to somebody about loss, you know? Or if you haven't been happy, how can you speak about that? So certain things that come out in songs are really about experience. And I think experience is a journey. So if you don't take the journey, you know, someone told me, they said, Commissioner Gordon, if you want to fly, you got to jump off a cliff. And I was like, whoa. It's like, that's a heavy statement.
What about getting on a plane?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they didn't go to the plane. It was like,
no parachute?
Yeah, no, it was like you got to jump off a cliff before you can fly, you know, in terms of like the analogy to a bird. You know, you got to get out the nest. So I think that's what it's all about.
What do you think Korean artists need, either in their attitudes and their production and their songs, or whatever else you can think of, that would help them to become more successful in the West?
Just time. It's inevitable. It's gonna happen. Yeah, it's just time. It's nothing that they need. It's happening. It's like you're in the middle. You know, I guess maybe for me, I have a different perspective from seeing the birth of something like hip hop and remembering when everybody would say to us in the neighborhood that this is never gonna be commercial music. This is a passing fad. No one's ever gonna listen to a guy talking over a record. And look at what happened. You know. So just like they said, no one would listen to, you know, Carlos. No one would listen to I've heard that my whole career. No one's gonna listen to a rap record about God or something that's positive. that's happened. So I think it's just a matter of time. This is a beautiful culture, beautiful country, but a beautiful culture with solid talent. And I don't think the community here should overlook that or take the pressure of what comes from the West and forget what it has, because it's very strong.
When we talk about K-pop, we can't leave out the world sensation Gangnam Style song and Psy. And I'm curious what you think about that phenomenon.
You know, I think differently now about it after coming here than maybe how I may have looked at it being abroad. The wealth of talent here is so broad that I can understand now where Gangnam Style came from, in the sense that I thought it was produced well, I thought it was extremely funny, you know, and I thought it was very catchy.
So you have been introduced to Korean music, and Korean K-pop in particular, K-rock, just very recently.
Yes.
It's not something that you've kind of listened to for years and years, right?
Yeah.
So what's your impression, because this is pretty new to you, yes?
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's new and it's old. It's you know how, I guess it's familiar because there's a lot of similarities in what goes on at home. You know, I grew up with hip hop. You know, hip hop started in my neighborhood in the Bronx. So seeing young people do that, you know, and all the different various forms of it, it still all takes me back to the beginning. So there's a very strong connection, I think, between what happened at home, you know, and it's happening and what's happening here. It's all here.
Gordon Williams visited an entertainment agency located in Gangnam to discover the next Korean wave star. Here, he was able to meet the members of several K-pop idol groups. He came early to gain more information on the idol groups he was about to meet and to listen to K-pop music, which is still quite new to him.
So we record.
The rookie idol groups finally arrived to meet the Kamosh.
Pleased to meet you, brother. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
여기 뒤에 저희 준이에요.
Chanel? Oh, pleased to meet you. Gordon. Group? All one group?
Yes.
One group.
One group? Solo? No, I know your band. Good. Well, hopefully we get to, you know, see you play some music. I brought some music too. We can listen. Good to meet you. First time Korea. Oh. Yeah. First time. Yes. Thank you.
1, 2.
This meeting pushed the star record producer one step closer to finding the next big Korean wave star.
So, Commissioner Gordon, how did you get your start in music?
DJing. Started as a DJ. You know, grew up at a time when there weren't any rap records around. Rap was something that we knew in the neighborhood. So you heard it outside, you know, in a park. You heard it, you know, echoing out of somebody's window. You know, that was pretty much all we knew. Matter of fact, we didn't even really know that no one else knew about it because it was such a commonplace thing for us that we thought everybody knew about rap. It wasn't until I actually got old enough to leave the neighborhood to realize that no, you know, it was only in our neighborhood. So DJing, the first time I saw somebody scratch on a turntable, it was like a bug just bit me, you know. So of course now I go upstairs and start scratching up all my mother's records. So that lasted for about maybe an afternoon where it was like, okay, listen, you gotta go in the other room and let me find something for you to scratch. So that started off with one turntable. She started me off with one turntable and a mixer, and then eventually the following year. This is when I was 11 years old, 10, my 11th birthday.
Wow.
The turntable and the mixer, and then that following year when I was 12, I had 2. And then that's where it started.
Incredible. So your mom saw some talent in you then, or did she just not want you to ruin her records?
Maybe a little bit of both.
Yeah.
You know, I think to her credit, I have to give all credit to her because if she didn't support it, you know, I'm sure some of the things I was saying sounded really crazy, especially because I started so young. You know, I started asking for these things at a young age, but I always really believed that I could do it. You know, I don't know. I never was intimidated by electronics or equipment. I always just felt like I was supposed to use it. So in supporting that, she definitely built the foundation, because once that happened, and then all the kids started hanging in my room, which was the next phase of, you know, okay, Ma, is it all right if, you know, Terrence comes? Okay, now it's Terrence and Craig. Well, you know what, today is Terrence, Craig, and Junior. Okay, Ma, it's gonna be like 6 of us, but we're gonna be in the back, you know? so it just kept growing and growing to, you know, this crew that was in my bedroom. And that little bedroom was where our first record deal actually happened.
And tell us about that first record deal.
Well, I had a friend of mine who used to rap, who we first started doing tracks together when I was probably around 15-ish or so, and we were just learning about drum machines and how to figure that thing out. And we had a track that that we did. We were trying to, you know, we wanted to be producers, you know, because now when we reached around 15, 16, it's when, like, I think Sugar Hill Gang, when that record came out, you know, between the Sugar Hill Gang and then there were a couple of local rap records, but now it started turning into a thing where, oh, let's try to make a record, you know? So it was like, well, you gotta have a song. So, you know, we started trying to put these songs together, and we had one song on a little demo, and this was a cassette at the time, because cassettes were out. So this cassette, we had this one song on this cassette that got heard by a DJ who at the time had just started with Atlantic Records. And he heard it and couldn't do anything with us at Atlantic, but said, you know, he had a friend who had an independent label in Brooklyn, another area in New York. So we go see this guy, we play him our cassette, and we're thinking we're going there, at least I'm thinking that we're going there to sell him the song, because the guy has a little label, and he says, no, you know, I like your version of the song, I want to sign you 2 guys, but find 2 other guys, put a group together. So I'm a little taken aback. I'm like 16, 17, 16, between 16, 17 at the time, I think it was 17, and you know, I'm like, we're gonna be a group. I mean, that's not what I signed up for. I thought we were trying to be producers. And my friend who used to rap, he was definitely more of a front man. I've always been better in the back, you know. I guess that started from just being a DJ. So from the DJ to the engineer to the producer, you know, you're the person behind the artist. So I was always uncomfortable with stage, and he wasn't. So he was like, look, we're gonna be a group, and we're gonna hold some auditions, and this is it. We have our chance. And I'm like, okay. So we end up literally having an audition. In our first audition, we find 2 guys, we do this group, we go in the studio, we record the record. Next thing you know, about a week later, I'm on the radio.
Wow.
I'm like, we're on the radio?
What was it like hearing your music on the
radio? It was crazy, it was ridiculous.
You're like 16, 17 years old.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. I couldn't even believe it. I'm like, how are we on the radio? And not only are we on the radio, people like it, you know, and everyone now is like, Gordon got a record on the radio. So my mother's like, so you have a record on the radio? I was like, yeah, Ma, I kind of got a record.
She must have been so proud of you.
Yeah, she was. She was. I mean, I couldn't pay attention enough to that, and I wish I would have, to kind of see her excitement about it, because we were just going. It was like, now you have to do shows, so now we have to figure that out. You know, what's it like to be on stage and go rehearse.
What about school?
Well, I graduated, that high school had finished, I graduated early because I was a year ahead from just when I started. I didn't get skipped, I was just a year ahead. So when I got out of high school, I was still 16. So that summertime between 16 and 17 is when the record happened.
Motown is where a lot of African Americans get their start, and we've seen some of the most incredible R&B artists and incredible talent come out of there. And you were also signed with Motown, and you're an incredible talent and a great producer. So what do you think it is about Motown that was able to help a lot of people get their start and also help you get your start?
Well, I think the you know, Motown is an unbelievable story, you know, and Berry Gordy and the people that he was able to put together were all incredible talents. The Motown that I got signed to was very different than that Motown, but I think the underlying premise of what Motown was about was still there, because even when we got there, myself and my partner who I actually work with now, his name is Rich Nice, really great producer himself, has worked with a lot of big artists, 50 Cent, Ludacris, Track Masters. Rich was rapping then, and I had a production deal. And it was a learning environment for us. Even though we didn't really have really big success with the stuff we were doing, we were very influential on a lot of people that were around us, because at that time Motown Records was purchased by MCA, and MCA had also purchased Uptown Records. So Uptown is where Heavy D was signed. Puff Daddy, at that time he was an intern. He wasn't Puff Daddy then, he was Sean, you know, and he was the intern working there, and you had Mary J. Blige, and you had Jodeci, and you know, so it was a hub of creativity. Teddy Riley was signed there. It was a group named Guy that he had. It was their beginnings. So all of us were kind of coming up at the same time and interacting with each other. So we all sort of learned. Some were a lot more successful than others, but the thing about the Motown environment was that there was a lot of communication, and there were elders around that had been in the business for a while that could always sit you down and go, well, you know, don't do that, you know, you should, you know, close the door, let me talk to you about this. And you know, it was always that. So I think that's what was, you know, it was a learning environment, teaching environment.
You've also worked at Sony Music, and you've spoken a little bit about your time there and the artists with whom you've worked. I'm very curious though, because working with an artist and just working on their album is probably different than working on a soundtrack of a movie. What were some of the differences that you noticed?
Yeah, it was different. You know, the whole experience of going to be employed by a label, I always tell folks that that's when I really learned about the music business. Even though I had been in the business prior to being at Sony for at least 12 years, it was like starting all over once you got there, because then you really understand the dynamics of what went on behind, you know, marketing and promoting and actually making money. You know, it's one thing to create something, but it's a whole other thing to actually sell it and see a return on that, and or see a loss on it and how you deal with that. And so that's really what we learned there. Now, something like a soundtrack, especially that particular one, because it was such a big movie, there was a lot of pressure in terms of, you know, delivery, because the music is a smaller piece of this overall movie. So you get to see the demands of who you actually get to see who's the biggest, the head honcho in the room. You know, you may have thought you were the big one until you meet the director, and then you may have thought he was the big one until you meet the executive producer, and you thought he was the big one until you meet the head of the studio. So it's kind of you learn like the hierarchy of what, in terms of profit, because the movies make much more money than the music, you know, division. So that particular movie, because it was very expensive to create and then made so much money afterwards, it was a lot different than making a record.
And with that type of a soundtrack album, how much time did you realistically have to make all the music?
Well, that's a collaborative effort. I really worked on maybe 3 songs on that soundtrack. It just so happened that I did the biggest song, so it overshadows everything else, but there were a lot of other people that contributed.
They gave the best to you.
A lot of people, no, they gave the problems to me, because that was really what it was about, was fix a problem. Yeah, that's really how it ended up really happening, that I got involved in it. There were some issues that were happening in terms of completing it, and it wasn't really my project. It became my project by default. I mean, I'm thankful that it became my project, but it became the project because there were issues, and it was like, well, you know, that's kind of the title commissioner, part of the it's like the blessing and the curse. It's like the commissioner will fix it, so it doesn't matter how bad it is or what time it is, or, you know, how much sleep you don't get, go fix it, you know. So this was one of those go fix it, because the music was, at that point, was hampering the completion of the movie. So it really needed to get done, so they sort of said, get in there and figure it out.
You've won several Grammy Awards, and for most singers, songwriters, composers, producers, you know, it's such an incredible honor, and you've won several. As a Grammy Award winner, what do you think about, you know, having won those awards? Does that validate what you do, or do you already feel successful with what you've done, even if you didn't win those awards?
I think the first one was kind of that, you know, was a validating feeling, really, because, not because of the award itself, it's, you know, you have a lot of naysayers along the way, so it is kind of rewarding to to think back, to, you know, to reflect on all the people that said, oh, you wouldn't make it, or this wouldn't work, or this will never happen, and then to actually stand there holding it and be recognized by your peers, it's a big deal. But you know, after that, it kind of is fleeting, because you know the music business is all about what have you done lately. So you you almost can't rest on that. You have to keep, you know, you have to keep moving. But it is good. It is great to be able to reflect on it, though. Now, especially now, looking back, and like you said, you know, I've won several, and you know, it's an accomplishment. So I think it's a, you know, it does help.
I mean, that's such an exciting thing. I mean, when you first found out that you won the Grammys, what did you do? Well,
you don't find out until you're there, you know. So, you know, you're nominated, but they kind of keep it. It's like this whole hush hush thing where they try to keep it so they can get. I guess that's, you know, your TV people. You want to get somebody excited on camera, so they kind of try to keep that thing. But we sort of knew, like when we got there, towards the middle of the day, that at least one of them she had won. The first one was with Lauryn. That at least one of them she had won. She ended up winning. She got nominated 10 times and ended up winning, I think, 5 or 6 that night, and I won two of them. And so by the middle of the day, you know, we realized, okay, you know what, you got one. But see, I was also working, so because I'm mixing the show. So even at the Grammys, that here I am receiving the award, I'm running between the venue and the truck to go mix in the truck, because I'm watching it on television. So again, I didn't really have a time to the first one, I didn't get a chance to accept it because I was actually in the truck. So someone else stood there who everyone thought later on that was me, because no one had ever seen me. They just heard Commissioner Gordon, you know, the Grammy Award winner, and this other guy is standing there. So it's like, oh, that's Commissioner Gordon. So it's not till the last one, which was Album of the Year, and that award happened right after Lauryn finished performing. So again, I'm in the truck because I have to mix the performance, and as soon as I finish, all of the guys are in the truck and they're saying, you know, they're reading the nomination and they hear my name. So I'm still focusing on like turning down faders and stuff, and everybody's like, yo, what are you doing? They just called your name. I said, really? It's like, get out there, get out there. So now they all like push me out the truck. So now I start running, right? Because I'm running to the stage and I'm running backstage. So now the security gets me and they bring me behind the stage. And literally, as I get to backstage, it's like Lauryn Hill. So I hear all the people clapping and she's standing out. And I'm backstage, kind of like, what do I do? And then somebody comes behind me, like one of the security guys, and just pushes me out. So I kind of like stumble out. Yeah, kind of like stumble out. And I turned to my left, and Sting is standing there, because Sting and Whitney Houston gave her that award. So I turned in, I'm like, whoa, that's Sting. So I'm caught up in the fact that, hey man, it's Sting, you know? And all these people are clapping. And so it was a really surreal moment, because I didn't even get a chance, again, to set myself properly. So the same guy who was standing there during the first one was standing in my spot. I was supposed to receive the award. So when the camera shot happened, I wasn't in the camera shot again.
Who is this person?
So of course, my mother and everybody home is calling me like, where were you? Where? I was like, oh, I don't know. I was standing there, but you know, they had everything sort of, you know, how they block where you stand. And I didn't know anything about television and all of that at that time, as far as being the person in front, because I was always the person in back. So I thought because I was standing there, I was on it, but it was a tight shot of just her, and it was supposed to be me, the person standing next to her, and I was like one person over. So that was a little like, hey, but maybe I even thought afterwards, maybe that was a good thing, because I still kept a bit of my anonymity. You know, I could still walk in the neighborhood and not get mobbed.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
You've been a DJ when you started, and then you signed with the record label, then you produced and you worked in, you know, big shops, you know, big corporations, and now you have your own boutique shop. What do you think kind of motivated you to start your own kind of boutique as opposed to kind of being with the big boys?
Self-determination, you know, wanting the freedom to just create again, but also wanting to be able to make maybe connections that, you know, corporations get, some things get bogged down in that, you know, and the decision-making process sometimes, because, you know, you may have, you know, 50 heads in a room, it's just difficult to get things done. And I felt like, all right, you know, we've been doing this long enough, and you know, we've been fortunate to have won awards and met really great people, and you know, and be validated, as we were talking about earlier, be validated by all of that. So you don't have to prove anything anymore. You just want to now do your real work. You know,
Yes.
do the work that's rewarding, do the work that helps, do the work that, you know, creates special moments. But find ways, we gotta make money, so we gotta find ways to make it, you know.
Sure.
Yeah, we have to do that, but not let that stand in front of the creative process and the specialness of those moments.
And now you're doing this incredible business, yes?
Yeah, we started, you know, this is, I call it a global cultural exchange. That's what we're kind of loosely titling it. It's called, the name of the company is Lalabella. Film projects, there's music projects, there's television projects, there's technology projects, there's, you know, there's merchandise.
Doing it
Actually,
all.
this is one of our, you know, one of our
The
lines.
shirts. Oh, I like
one
it.
of our lines, yeah. Color Heritage is one of our lines. You know, we just connecting our dots because it's really about creativity. So, you know, wherever there's art, that's what we're looking at. And then you also have to cross-pollinate. So in terms of finding, you know, if you work on a movie needs music. So if we're working on the movie, why not be working on the music and trying to find ways to create opportunities for the you know, for both things.
The word Lalabella has such a cool kind of rhythm, and you've chosen it as the name of your company. How did you come up with that?
The name was actually a takeoff on Lalibela, which is a church in Ethiopia. It's actually a historical location, but it's a city and a church. And I became aware of Ethiopian culture primarily through the Marley family. But a good friend of mine was the ex-patriarch from the church. He was the archbishop. His name was Abuna Yisak. And he spoke to me a lot about different qualities of leadership and counseling, and as well as spiritual things of a spiritual nature, but more dealing with business, because he was very well educated in business. So when he told me, you know, when I heard the name Lalibela, I always thought, oh, that's an interesting name. And he told me the story of Lalibela, which is Lalibela, which is a very interesting and longer story, which I wouldn't go into here, but it's very significant. That was the story behind the name, and
Very
it's
cool.
also helps to remind me of him and the qualities that he had, and some of the things that he, you know, talked to me about in terms of, you know, helping people.
Helping people seems to be a very important part of your life.
Yes.
With your professional work and maybe even your personal time and your volunteer time. Why do you think you have such a strong desire to help people?
Because I was helped, you know, and I was helped by significant people who, at a time when, you know, it's like I fell down and couldn't get up, and somebody helped me stand up. So I try to remember that those times when I couldn't get up, there was somebody that helped. And yeah, I was able to stand after a while and do a lot of things, but at those moments, if those people weren't there, I don't know if I would have been able to get up. So I try to remember that, you know.
You talk about helping disadvantaged kids with what you want to do, and I'm curious where that desire to help comes from. Do you think it might have something to do with your upbringing?
Absolutely, it's from my mom. You know, it's, you know, I've had really strong support. You know, and I was in a single parent home. I grew up in a neighborhood where it was kind of rough. You know, and not the roughest, but rough enough. You know, and saw a lot of things. And without that support, I wouldn't be here. So when I start to meet, you know, other young people, and particularly those that are affected by hip hop, which is pretty much the entire world now. You know, it used to be our neighborhood. Hip hop is a global phenomenon, you know, now, and I can remember its beginnings, and I can remember what made us do it in the first place. And it wasn't about gangsters, it wasn't about balling, it wasn't about blinging, it wasn't about anything like that. It was about changing
what
it.
is that?
Balling is like, oh yeah, I forgot, I'm in Korea. Well, how would you say, okay, flash.
Okay,
you know,
so like bling. I know bling.
Bling, yeah, balling.
Okay.
Well, bling is the result of balling.
Okay.
If you're balling, then you get bling.
Got
you know what I'm saying? So it's pretty much that. So, you know, it wasn't about that. It was about, there's always going to be an element of, you know, machismo, grandiose. That's just human nature. And that's just a male thing. But at the end of the day, what hip hop came from was disadvantaged youth who didn't have and who had to try to create something. We used the example of saying our formula was we had to take 0 and 0 and we had to make 1. We didn't even have one plus one. You know, it was how do you take nothing and get something, and that's hip hop. You can't play an instrument, you find a way. You scratch a turntable. You can't sing, you talk. You know, you don't have a club to dance in, you dance on the street. Concrete's too hard, they'll put a piece of cardboard down, and now you start breaking. You know, so all of these things that now have become a cultural phenomenon, and or I should say, not even a cultural, a commercial phenomenon, were cultural things based on expression of desire of wanting to do better, and desire of wanting to have fun, and the desire of people wanting to come together, and that also gets lost in the commercialness of it. So in wanting to give back, in teaching, it's more about trying to bring that concept back to it, so that now we can come together, because you know, we only got one planet to live on.
Absolutely. And you've been involved with some work in Africa. Would you like to tell us about that too?
Yeah, well, you know, I'm involved in, like I said, I don't sleep. I'm also involved. I also teach. You know, so we have an academy, a Lalabella Academy, which was inspired by my time that I spent in Africa. You know, actually in Soweto, and you know, I got to meet some folks there again because of music, but in seeing, you know, the conditions in some of the places that I visited, you know, I wanted to work with the young people there and try to find ways. It really inspired me to see their commitment to just their commitment to hope, even in circumstances that were really dire, you know. So I just felt like, you know, there's got to be something we could do, or, you know, I didn't really know what it was, but I knew that music affects everyone and affected them in particular, because that's what brought me there. So that's where the academy sort of came out of, and it was really about using music to try to inspire, you know, help deal with social issues and those kinds of things. But now that has spread. But Africa was the place where it really started.
Inspired by his time in Africa, Gordon Williams is building a supply and human resource network to foster gifted individuals in music. He's established a music academy in the U.S. to provide them with an opportunity to learn and grow as musicians. Aside from developing his career as a music producer, he is pursuing a new dream. His dedication will make this world a brighter place by giving the less fortunate a chance to shine.
I really feel very strongly about you reap what you sow.
Yes.
And it seems like you've sown a lot of really good karma. You've helped a lot of people along the way, and now with your Lalabella Academy and what you really want to do to help, you know, bring about really good quality music, good quality talent, you know, back into the scene, and not compromise on some of those values. So I really look forward to, you know, seeing what's going to be happening in the future for you.
Yes, well, thank you.
What are some of the things that you are planning in the future?
We have 3 or 4 artists that are, you know, we're nurturing right now at home. You know, we have a band, the White Tiger Society. We have we actually have 2 Asian rappers, which is kind of strange, you know, like how all this happened, because they were totally, they didn't have anything to do with me coming here. This happened out of, you know, like I was telling you about my friend that brought me here.
Yes.
We have a Chinese young lady named Cache, and then we have a Hawaiian rapper named Casey, and we're working on their projects now at home. And we also have another rapper named Rome DeMarco, who actually has a record now that's on the radio in New York. So,
very cool.
You know, yeah, we have some, you know, as well as Steve. We're always going to be with Steve. It's always going to be a Marley project. Steve's working on his album, on a new album right now, and I'm looking forward to bringing him here. You know, doing some exchange between the people and the folks that I've met over here, because I can see there's a lot of similarities and openings. So I haven't figured out the business of it yet, but I know that that's going to happen.
What do you think is one of the most important qualities that a good producer, needs to have?
I think the ability to listen. You know, you have to be able to guide a situation, an artist or a session, you know, or musicians, but you have to be able to kind of, you know, listen, to allow things to happen. That's something that I learned from Quincy, you know, early at the beginning, because, you know, the impression that I had of who he would be, you know, that I built up in my mind was so different than who he was when I saw him, you know, got the opportunity to see him just interact with folks in the studio. He was extremely humble. He was extremely, he listened to everybody, and he tried to incorporate that into what he was doing. And it was very zen, you know, like looking at that as opposed to, okay, well, I need you to do this, and I need you to do that, and I need you, which is what I kind of thought I would have seen, but it was actually the exact opposite.
Interesting. Well, I think that what you're aiming to do is really remarkable, and I mean, you really have been a mentor to a lot of the artists with you've worked and with whom you've worked, and you are by nature, you know, someone who has a lot to be able to share with people. What do you think is one of your strengths that you can kind of pass on and share with the youth?
Just that, don't give up. Like, it's never over until it's over. You know, it's just keep on. The race isn't for the swift; it's for those that make it to the end. And that's really the bottom line. It's like, just keep on, and you'll get there.
Last but not least, I asked a kind of philosophical question to each of my guests. And given that you are in the business of music and that you love music, I want to ask you, what does producing mean to you, and what does music mean to you?
What does it mean to me? I think producing really is about, for me, it's about bringing people together. You know, nurturing, bringing something forth. You know, from nothing. You know, creating. Music to me is, music represents the healing qualities of sound. You know, but now it depends on how you use it, because the same thing that puts something together can tear it apart, that same energy. So I think music is a very, very powerful force for change. Music is a very, very powerful force for communication, but music is also a very, very powerful force for disharmony. As much as there's harmony, it's also a force that can be used to point you in the wrong direction. So it represents to me the healing of a nation, the healing of the nation. So that's really what my interest is in music, and it's sort of always been. I just didn't understand it then, you know, because of the artists and the people that influenced me, like a Curtis Mayfield or Bob Marley or James Brown, or, you know, or Michael Jackson, or the people that are who we've looked to as the elders who have guided us. That's what their music was about. So that's the only thing that I really understand and know, and that's what I want to stay on.
Awesome. Well, Gordon, it's been so amazing to be able to talk to you and get firsthand info from an industry giant that has come to Korea, because, you know, Korea is, as you said, you know, really excited about its talent and wants to be able to send Korean talent to the rest of the world, and we need people like you who can come with the breadth of knowledge and experience that you've had to be able to see what we have here. And of course, no one can guarantee that there's going to be, you know, XYZ stars, you know, at a certain point. However, the fact that you are interested in Korean talent, I think, says a lot about what we have to offer, and I'm really curious to see what happens in the future. So I'm super excited.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here as well.
Awesome. Thank you again for being on my show, and I look forward to hearing all the great things in the future.
Oh, thank you, Susan. Thank you, Korea.
Thank you so much.
Boom, boom, ba,